these text messages, everything that they're doing, the theories, the idea that Ryan was behind it and then put him in the movie, it was that bad. This has made what was just a stupid...
You are going to depose Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Taylor Swift, who else?
For years, Blake Lively and Taylor Swift were the definition of celebrity sisterhood. Glamorous vacations, shared birthday celebrations, cameos in each other's music videos, red carpet moments that made fans believe their bond was unshakable. They were more than friends, they were family. Or so we thought. But now, that picture-perfect friendship has come crashing down. And at the center of the implosion, a lawsuit, a series of secret messages, and a damning courtroom testimony that turned Taylor Swift from supportive bestie to star witness. This isn't just a fallout. It's a betrayal of trust, a PR disaster, and a full-blown Hollywood scandal. And if you think this is just another spat between celebrities, think again. Because what Taylor Swift revealed in court doesn't just end a friendship. It exposes Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively's husband, as the silent architect behind a legal war that was never meant to be public. And now, for the first time, we have the full timeline. The secret meetings, the voice memos, the manipulation. This is the story of how Hollywood's most beloved couple went from the top of the world to the center of the biggest celebrity scandal of the year.
I don't think Ryan Reynolds is in reality. This response to the motion to dismiss response is just reads like he doesn't even know what Justin put in his own complaints. It is incredibly frustrating to read this entire thing. There's a lot. I'll start with the intro and then I'll go through a few examples. The Wayfarer Party's opposition confirms the central thesis of Mr. Ryan's motion to dismiss. The FAC is meritless. List of grievances and hurt feelings designed to retaliate against Blake Lively for raising SH or retaliation claims. Keyword claims that he has every right to defend himself on. The opposition is riddled with fatal concessions. As if you haven't done that yourself in your own past interviews and everything else, but I digress. One example, despite the FAC's preposterous $400 million damages claim, the opposition concedes that the FAC is in fact alleges no actual monetary harm whatsoever, instead relying exclusively on defamation per se theory that even if it were valid, which it's not, fails to allege cognizable damages for any of the FAC's other claims. In addition, the opposition concedes the FAC does not allege proximate causation, another fatal omission. The opposition reveals something much worse than the FAC's failure to state valid claims against Mr. Reynolds. Stunningly, it confirms that only 3 of the Wayfarer parties, Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, Wayfarer, have articulated any legal claim against Mr. Reynolds at all. As detailed further below, the sole alleged defamatory statements concern only Mr. Baldoni. The other only alleged conduct as to extortion was directed at most Wayfarer studios, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. And the only parties even arguably in contractual relationship with WME were Wayfarer and Baldoni. But disregarding that rule, obligations, every Wayfarer party asserted each claim against Mr. Reynolds, meaning that every Wayfarer party, other than Mr. Baldoni, brought a federal lawsuit alleging at least one cause of action that they know they had no legal basis to assert. None of Mr. Sarowitz, Miss Nathan, Miss Abel, It Ends With Us, Manage or Tag has a single cause of action against Mr. Reynolds that they even arguably possess. All those claims should be dismissed, and Mr. Reynolds should be awarded his attorney's fees and costs under New York law. Now, here's what he's trying to say at the end there, and we're going to get into an example that's sort of, he's trying to claim, well, my comment was to Justin, if we're going to hear that, and that doesn't affect everybody else. As if calling Justin an actual predator doesn't affect all of Wayfarer is beyond me, because it does. But as I talked to Christopher Melcher, he agrees it's silly, but there very likely could be a request from the judge to just amend the amendment, the complaint, to include a more specific reason as to why.
When Taylor Swift was first subpoenaed in Blake Lively's escalating legal war against director Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios, most people assumed it was just a procedural move. Swift's name had floated in headlines, sure, but never as a central figure. Fans thought she'd issue a quick statement, maybe testify off the record and be done with it. They couldn't have been more wrong. Swift's legal team immediately sprang into action. They filed not 1, not 2, but 3 separate motions to quash the subpoena, insisting Swift had no first-hand involvement and that her privacy was being unfairly targeted. They cited undue burden, harassment, even emotional distress. But Judge Michael Thornton wasn't persuaded. In a sharply worded opinion, he ruled that Swift possessed unique and relevant information that goes to the heart of the matter, and denied all attempts to keep her out of the courtroom. It was then that the tide began to shift. When Swift finally walked into that Manhattan courthouse, every camera outside turned to capture her arrival. But what the cameras didn't see was what she was carrying and what it would mean. A custom leather portfolio. Inside, 64 meticulously preserved screenshots of text messages, dozens of time-stamped emails, handwritten notes from meetings, 2 voice memos, call logs dating back 11 months, and one chilling timeline labeled Case Coordination. And then came the sworn statement 19 pages long that turned this legal battle into a full-blown celebrity firestorm. Taylor didn't just confirm her involvement. She confirmed Ryan Reynolds's. What followed was a courtroom moment that left reporters scrambling, attorneys stunned, and a public image carefully crafted over years crumbling in real time. Because it wasn't Blake that Taylor exposed. It was Ryan Reynolds.
To create a whole character in Deadpool and Wolverine as a way of trolling Justin Baldoni. If you guys saw the movie, there's a character, his name in it is Nice Pool. Here's the clip in question that many are attributing as a trolling of Justin.
But in here, everybody calls me Nice Pool. Oh my goodness, wait till you see Lady Pool. She is gorgeous.
Lady Pool was played by Blake Lively.
She just had a baby too, and can't even tell. I don't think you're supposed to say that. That's okay. I identify as a feminist. Right.
There it is. That's the theory, that he was man buns and all, that this was all a knock on Justin. Now, Justin infamously had a man bun. In fact, he cut it off for charity, guys. But there he is. There's a lot of images you can see of old Justin, which I gotta be honest, do look a little bit like man bun, Nice Pool. And the whole identify as a feminist, clearly Ryan trying to mock him and say that it's nonsense. And I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't know Justin at all, but I will say, man, this is a massively huge level of pettiness from Ryan. Now, again, if everything they're saying happened against Justin, I can understand why Ryan is upset. But feels like a weird thing to joke about if it was as serious as Blake claims. Really, to just like mock this like fake feminist in your movie as the nice guy in the film. It's all just giving me a headache as to really, was this really good for the movie? Because honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of the Nice Pool character. I thought this whole character was a weird, it's a bad part, not as funny part of the movie. And to think that Ryan, who I'm a huge fan of, was a huge fan of. Look, this whole issue, Colonel Kurtz said it really well. I haven't seen unforced errors like this since, well, Amber. However, the situation resolves. It's astounding how Blake Lively has committed huge strategic, unforced errors and turned a season of bad social media that had already resolved with the giant success of the movie, Facts, into potentially years of terrible public sentiment and online division. She no doubt thought she was dealing a death blow to Justin, but suddenly things aren't looking as smug. This is where the problem arises. This story was over. People were moving on. I think even people would have forgotten and moved on and said, oh, she was bad in those junkets, and she could have fixed it in the next round of press. But now this lawsuit, these text messages, everything that they're doing, the theories, the idea that Ryan was behind it and then put him in the movie, it was that bad. This has made what was just a stupid, I think, disagreement.
Since the earliest days of Blake Lively's legal firestorm, Ryan Reynolds projected the same polished, affable image the public has adored for over a decade. He smiled through interviews, cracked charming jokes when asked about the lawsuit, and painted himself as a devoted father staying home with the kids while Blake navigated the legal chaos. In every soundbite and every feature story, he repeated the same line he had no idea this was coming. And the world believed him. Why wouldn't they? Ryan Reynolds was Hollywood's most beloved everyman. He wasn't just likable, he was untouchable. But that illusion came crashing down the moment Taylor Swift took the stand. Under oath, Taylor delivered a testimony that didn't just implicate Ryan, it exposed him. She testified that he wasn't caught off guard by the lawsuit. He wasn't confused or kept in the dark. In fact, according to her, he was driving it from the start. Taylor described 4 detailed strategy meetings held in her own New York penthouse between October and December of 2023. These weren't informal chats. These were war room sessions. Ryan Reynolds was in the center of them all, pacing, diagramming, directing. He pitched narrative angles, crafted PR strategies, and gave input on legal phrasing. In Taylor's words, Ryan wasn't reacting to the lawsuit. He was engineering it. The courtroom went silent as she read a timeline aloud. Then the hard evidence surfaced. Court-subpoenaed security logs confirmed that Ryan entered the offices of Blake's legal team Hartman Davis on 3 different occasions, well before the lawsuit went public. These visits occurred weeks before the date he had publicly claimed to have found out about the case. There were sign-in sheets, surveillance stills, phone metadata placing him at the building, all undeniable. And then came the most telling detail, the email alias. Investigators traced a string of confidential documents and communications to an account named Bedford Projects. The name wasn't random. It was a subtle nod to the couple's secluded home in Bedford, New York. The messages weren't vague. They were filled with strategic attachments, calendar invites, call summaries, and lists titled Narrative Priorities. This wasn't a supportive husband being looped in after the fact. This was a full-blown architect, carefully building a defense months in advance and doing everything in his power to make sure no one ever found out.
You are going to depose Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Taylor Swift. Who else?
Well, I don't know that we're going to depose Taylor Swift or not.
Really?
I think that that's going to be, probably a game time decision. I don't know that decision's been made, but I can tell you this: there's anyone that reasonably has information that can be that can provide evidence in this case is going to be deposed. I mean,
That's
for
Taylor
sure.
Swift. She was there for that meeting.
She was there for that meeting.
Okay, well, I'm a lawyer. I know what that means. and that's why I'm just thinking that even when you take Blake and Ryan out of it in terms of how they personally feel about it all, I mean, to say that we're going to put Taylor Swift in the middle of this whole thing, I think they are going to do everything they can to avoid going to court, because the last thing they want is to have their friend, the biggest star in the world now, sitting on a stand being grilled by Brian Friedman.
My assumption is that they're going to probably take some legal actions that are beyond the bounds of decency, and we'll see if they can try to avoid a deposition.
How could they do that if there's relevance?
I'm going to object and order the witness not to testify.
You're not his lawyer. You're his friend. Jeez.
Mark is usually my lawyer, though.
Out of all the evidence submitted during the trial, photos, emails, encrypted messages, witness statements, there was one single piece that changed everything. Not a smoking gun, not a confession caught on tape, but a voice memo, just 42 seconds long. And yet, it flipped the case upside down. The courtroom went silent as it played. Ryan Reynolds, calm, calculated, speaking in a low, measured voice. "We need to make sure our stories align perfectly on this," he said. "As far as anyone knows, I'm completely in the dark about all of it. That's the only way this works." No stuttering, no doubt. Just a quiet certainty in his tone. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a directive. And suddenly everything changed, because that memo confirmed something the prosecution had only hinted at. There was coordination, there was pressure, and there was something deeply unsettling going on behind the scenes. Under oath, Taylor Swift took the stand. The room held its breath as she testified. She said the message arrived in the middle of the night, not long after she had privately expressed growing discomfort with the situation. She had started asking questions, raising doubts, questioning the ethics of staying silent. And Ryan's response? "It's not lying, it's protecting everyone involved." That line, that one line, it hung in the air like smoke that refused to clear. She described the months leading up to that moment as a blur of anxiety and manipulation, a constant stream of communication from Reynolds. Late-night texts, voice notes, encrypted chats. Court records confirmed 217 direct messages exchanged over the course of just 8 months, many of them between 2 and 4 a.m. Taylor described it as relentless. She used the word obsessive. She said she felt pressured to play along, that every time she tried to step back, he pulled her in again, not with threats, not directly, but with implication, with guilt, with carefully worded appeals. And that pressure, she said, came from someone the world believed was incapable of harm, A beloved actor, a husband, a father, someone who could make the world laugh with a tweet and win over millions with a smile. But behind closed doors, she painted a different picture, one of manipulation, control, secrecy. And that 42-second voice memo? It wasn't just evidence. It was the mask slipping. In that moment, the courtroom didn't see a celebrity. They saw a man who had spent months maintaining a lie, not just to protect himself, but to control the narrative, to make sure the truth stayed buried, but it didn't. Because in the end, it was his own voice that exposed him. Just 42 seconds, but enough to change the course of the case, forever.
Now this gets into specifically the 2 times allegedly that Mr. Reynolds called Mr. Baldoni a predator, and saying that the FAC allegations suggest that Mr. Reynolds genuinely, perhaps passionately, believes that Mr. Baldoni's behavior is reflective of a predator. Even the FAC plausibly alleged that Mr. Reynolds called Mr. Baldoni a predator while believing the opposite, which it does not. The law establishes that calling someone a predator amounts to constitutionally protected opinion. And the FAC's thin-skinned outrage over a movie character, the satirical woke nice pool, does not even pretend to be tied to any actual legal claims. Instead, it falls into the FAC's general allegation of hurt feelings, in which reality is nothing more than a desperate effort to advance the same curated bully image that the Wayfarer parties created and disseminated in the retaliation campaign they launched against Ms. Lively in August of 2024.
I mean, it is a bully tactic. He's not denying that Nice Pool is Justin. And the idea that he used such an important movie for Marvel fans, for Deadpool fans, and he created a whole character, Justin, and we're supposed to not be affected by that or acknowledge that that's weird and petty and potentially defamatory. I don't know. The whole thing is just weird. But I love the thin skin. He's just thin skinned. It's just ridiculous. That the thin skinned comment really stuck to me. I'm just like, yeah, Justin, we're destroying your life. I believe my wife was wrong, but I'm still allowed to believe her. We mocked you and we killed you in the movie. We told your agent to fire you. You've lost all these other movies, but it's just your thin skin. Just get over it. I'll be honest, Kim, this whole thing really was almost a final nail in the coffin of me hoping to sort of be good with Ryan. That I feel like this triple down really makes me look at him in a new light, where I just feel like, dude, you might be wrong. Your wife might not be telling the truth. There was no need for you to write this aggressively emotional charged response, because to me, it just makes me like him even less. Because again, he's doing, as we read, guys, this whole thing is theatrics to the public as well. Let's call it what it is, right, Kim? This is not just some legal document. This is Ryan loudly saying, I believe my wife, and anybody who doesn't, you're against me, is how I read this whole thing. And I find it incredibly off-putting.
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing that sticks out in this paragraph for me is the idea of saying that basically it's fine if I called him a predator if I believe it. It's fine. And the problem is, it's like, okay, so you're admitting then essentially that you have called him this. You have reason to
Which he does multiple times.
Yes.
He does that multiple times, right? Yeah.
So, but the thing is, I don't feel like that word is a light word to use, especially in Hollywood, in a post Weinstein world, right? Like this is huge. It's very, very damning. And
well, not to interrupt you, but he takes away section. Notice that he keeps using the word predator, but not using the actual apparent word, which was sexual predator, which is way more charged and way more specific. And I say you, Ryan, I see you trying to legally ease your way out. But you didn't keep repeating the word sexual predator, which does have connotations, Kim. You're spot on.
Mhm.
If everything that had come out so far wasn't enough to shatter his image, Ryan Reynolds managed to add fuel to the fire in the most unexpected way imaginable. Not through another statement, not through leaked messages or court testimony, but through a movie character. In Deadpool Wolverine, audiences were expecting irreverence, chaos, and Reynolds' usual self-aware humor. But what they weren't expecting was Nicepool, a brand new character, woke, awkward, painfully politically correct, a clumsy do-gooder who seemed out of place even in Deadpool's chaotic universe. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was who Nicepool reminded people of. Within minutes of the film's release, fans and critics alike started pointing out the obvious Nicepool looked exactly like Justin Baldoni. The resemblance wasn't subtle. The same clean, cropped haircut, the soft-spoken tone, the earnest feminist one-liners. Even the way he moved felt familiar. And then came the line that sparked outrage. Mid-scene, Nicepool turns to the camera and says, "I identify as a feminist." Cue awkward silence. Then laughter. Some people in the theater chuckled, others didn't. Because this time it didn't feel like satire, it felt personal. Insiders were quick to connect the dots. Was Ryan Reynolds really using a $200 million Marvel blockbuster to take a shot at his wife's courtroom rival? If so, it was a move that backfired. Badly. Critics called it tone-deaf. Audiences were confused, some even angry. They didn't see a joke, they saw a man losing control of the narrative. Instead of mocking Baldoni, Reynolds ended up raising even more questions about himself. Why now? Why this character? And what kind of person uses one of the year's most anticipated films to settle a personal score? And Taylor Swift? Sources close to her say this moment, the Nicepool moment, was the final straw. For months she'd stayed silent, carefully composed, focused on the case, but watching the man she once defended weaponize a superhero film to mock someone she was legally entangled with? That she couldn't ignore. From that point on, she stopped defending. She stopped covering, and she started talking. Because behind the Marvel jokes and clever editing, Nicepool wasn't just a character. He was a mask. And the man behind it was running out of ways to hide. Blake Lively and Taylor Swift were once inseparable. Hollywood's golden duo, red carpets, matching vacations, inside jokes shared in interviews. Swift even featured Blake's children in her music video for Betty. That wasn't just a cameo. That was family. But now, radio silence. No likes, no comments, no support. Swift hasn't engaged with a single one of Blake's posts in months. And Blake? She's erased nearly every trace of their friendship. 86 posts gone. Birthday tributes, behind-the-scenes selfies, girls' trips to Rhode Island, all deleted. Sources close to the Lively household say the change hasn't gone unnoticed, especially by the kids. They still ask, when is Auntie Taylor coming back? But Blake, she refuses to answer. This year, for her birthday dinner at 11 Madison Park, a tradition going back 6 years, Swift was not there. No photos, no sightings, no cryptic lyrics the next day. And according to one guest, when someone at the table casually mentioned Taylor's name, Blake stood up and walked away. No words, no explanation, just gone. Whatever happened between them, it runs deeper than unfollowing someone on Instagram. This isn't a pause, it's a fracture. And those close to both women agree there is no reconciliation coming. No reunion post. No inside joke. No surprise reappearance. This friendship is over. Ryan Reynolds still insists he's innocent. Blake Lively remains quiet. Taylor Swift is trying to move on. But the public? They're not buying the story anymore. Hollywood is no stranger to betrayal. But this scandal isn't just gossip. It's legal. It's personal. And it's permanent. Reynolds' perfectly curated public persona has cracked. His emails, his late-night texts, his voice memo, they tell a very different story. One of manipulation, of deception, and of control. Taylor Swift may have sacrificed a decade-long friendship, but in doing so, she revealed the truth. And the truth is, Ryan Reynolds was never on the sidelines. He was behind the curtain the whole time. Like, comment, and subscribe. Because this story, it's far from over.